Well, thanks for your time today, everyone, and it's great to be here to present in front of you. We will be presenting in English, and I will apologise for this. Our Russian is none and void, but we're going to try and speak slowly, and hopefully everyone can understand. I'll just do a quick introduction of myself and Tom. My name's Austin Fuller. I'm the regional director of our customer solutions team at Huddle. I have been lucky enough to work in the sports industry for the past 15 years, working with some top high performing teams such as the England football team and also the England rugby team over my journey. So what we're going to do today is we are going to talk about data strategies. But first of all, just to give you a bit of a flavour about what me and Tom do. So we work within our pro service team that basically use industry knowledge and challenges that we face to answer questions for customers, but also help with more strategic outlook. So today we're going to talk about data strategies and what we see in data strategies. On a yearly basis, myself and Tom speak to over 7,000 customers from all different sports, and everyone uses data very differently. So we want to give you a flavour of what the growing trends are in the world of sport and data. And we get that from a number of our experiences. So these are just a few of the logos of the teams that myself and Tom and the team at Huddle have worked with. So again, going from football all the way to basketball, but then also working for companies like Volumetrics. So just to give you an understanding of some of the teams that we have worked with within our team. These are the three things we'll talk about in our presentation. Why apply a data strategy at a club or federation or even an organization? How data strategies are applied in the organizations. And then Tom is going to show you about what the benefits are to using data in data strategies. So hopefully you'll be able to take a couple of things from this presentation to take back with you into your organization. So first, why do people use data strategies, or why do people use data? There are two key things around the why a data strategy works. First is you're there to provide evidence-based decision making. So as data analysts or data scientists or analysts or coaches, we're here to support decision making. But the second point, and the area that we miss a lot in the industry, is data can support you to make your workflows more efficient. So people in the room that we're speaking to now, how many times do you manually type in dates of birth, players' names, country, team on a regular basis? And things like that is where data strategies can be applied to speed up workflows within clubs and federations. So these are the two clear whys data strategies applied. From our 7,000 interactions with data experts from all different sports, there's a common trend. And that common trend is centralizing data into a single ecosystem. Why do we want to centralize that data? Well, in football that you all work in, there's so much data available, but at this moment in time, it's all used in isolation, which creates workflow inefficiencies. It reduces the amount of time you have available to look at the data and explore the data, but also provides that headache of what data is used for across that span of data available. So what everyone is trying to do is centralize it, but everyone's trying to create an environment that is flexible. So what does a centralized approach to data strategies look like? So this is a diagram of what data is available in football. You have event data provided by companies such as yourselves in Y-Scout. You have video data that you collect from filming matches or from broadcast quality footage. You may have tracking data, which will be done by tracking providers within an organization. But you also might have data collected from scout reports or data collected from physical data, such as GPS devices. A majority of the time, clubs have these in isolation, the 4 grey buckets below. And the challenge we will face is putting that all into a central integrated database where we can import APIs. But what does that do for a club? It centralizes all the data, and that can then get spread across departments. Because what we do see in clubs and federations is data is managed in each department, which then in isolation, you're creating multiple different department databases. So the importance is integrating that data into a single location for everyone to access, improves communication and collaboration within an organization, and it's also cheaper. So I want to show you 2 images of 2 different types of data strategies that we see from the conversations we have at clubs and organizations. Data strategy number 1. This is a house built with no clear direction, no clear foundation, and has been built on multiple times over the course of a year. And if one person or one thing happens within an organization or leaves an organization, that house is probably going to fall down at some point. And that organization is going to have to start all over again, but has no real clear identity of how they want to build a data strategy. So if you're in the room now and you've built your data strategy, have a think about whether that sounds similar to yourselves. Data strategy number 2. You'll see this nice shiny house, but the ground around it isn't flat, it's quite rocky. However, the building has the clear foundation, it has the purpose for every level, and it has a clear identity of where it needs to go. And it's got room to grow. So these are 2 different types of data strategies that we see on a regular basis. Some are more efficient than others. Some are better planned out than others. But the question is to ask yourself, what data strategy are you? And have you got a data strategy within your club, organization, or even the federation? So if we go back a few steps and I talk about workflow efficiencies, if you took just that alone and you applied data strategy really efficiently, imagine if you had 40 games a year, which majority of us have in the world of clubs, and you saved 1 hour of pre-match opposition analysis for speeding up your processes. You could save yourself about a week's worth of work, and that's just for an hour. So if we times that by 3, that's a lot of time back to actually dive into the data more or provide a higher level of evidence for the coach to make better decisions. So it's not just finding that one number or those numbers that are going to support why you should go and sign a player or play in a certain way. It's also that workflow efficiency that is key in building data strategies. So I'm going to jump onto the how now quickly. So how do teams do this? How do organizations build these data strategies? Firstly, I want to show you this image. This image was produced to show the data science landscape. As we all know, I'm sure there's experts in the room now, Everyone has different expertise in different areas of data science, or data strategies, as we want to call it. You could be a programmer, you could be an engineer, you could be great at machine learning, data visualization. There's lots and lots of different skill sets we see there. And that becomes a bit of a minefield when recruiting in elite sport. But one of the areas I want to really home in on is the bottom right of this diagram. You should see it says soft skills. In a world of sport, this is one of the most fundamental skill sets alongside all the others. Why? Because you've got to be able to communicate. You've got to be able to be creative. You've got to tell the story, because a coach won't have the data expertise that the people that are building this data strategy have. So what does that say for the team that you have to create to provide a data strategy within an organization? So myself and Tom have done a bit of investigation around what is an optimum team to have within an organization and a data strategy. And I want to share this with you. Again, there's many hybrid roles that play different parts, but we want to clearly define some roles within a data team or structure. The first role, which we actually don't find often enough in elite clubs, is a data architect. This is the person that puts the foundation level for all the architecture of your data strategy, centralizes all those data sets into a simple database to be able to use. And for many in organizations that we see, this is a role we don't actually see. And it's probably one of the most fundamental to going back to that image I showed about building that clear data strategy that you need within an organization. The second role that we see is important is this technical analyst role. And what's the role of a technical analyst? The role of a technical analyst is to be able to work and understand the data architecture. And I say understand, not deliver. Understand the football or sports side of the business and translate that into a story, or visualizations, as we might want to call it. But also can educate both ways. So can educate coaching or support staff, but also educate the data architects within an organization. And Tom is a great example of this role. The third is a data scientist, which when data became a really hot topic in the world of elite sport, this was the first role everyone jumped on, or the first type of role that everyone talked about. And again, you can get a hybrid between a data architect and a data scientist. But a traditional data scientist is more mathematical. We'll look at prediction models or research and do the cool stuff that you might not have time to do. And again, those three roles put together create a really efficient working data strategy team. But finally, to build that full data team, we want to have this technical analyst. And this is the traditional analyst that you may see at a game with a coach, filming a game, making some analysis themselves. And still, this is fundamental because this person has probably the best relationship with that coach or support staff. But they have to understand the process of the data team around it to provide the workflow efficiencies, but also the decision-making processes. So these are the four key roles that we see in an efficient data team. But as I said, you can find hybrids for these as well. But we just want to make it clear to everyone to understand the skills required within each of these roles are very different. And the final slide I want to show you today is what we call a data strategy adoption curve. So on one axis, we have evidence-based decision making or insights. So how insightful you are, okay? And as an organization below, we have a high performance workflow. So talking how efficient you are on your data strategy. So just have a think about where you are on that map if you wanted to map yourself. So if you're really insightful currently in the data strategy and highly efficient, you'd be top right in number 4. However, everyone in every different organization has a different path to go to number 4. And that takes education, that takes support, that takes lots of different mechanisms. But these are the common 4 stages we see in organizations. So number 1, down below, you use data, but very manually. So you're inputting data by typing, or you're inputting data by copying and pasting into an Excel sheet. You're doing all the manual tasks. And we do see this a lot. The second part is more of a hybrid data strategy, where we might see a little bit more automation, but very manual still. And this is the early adopters of the people trying to get into that strategy. And that could be someone exploring the use of Tableau for the first time, or visualizing their data on Keynote slides, but having an Excel sheet that automatically populates. The third that we see on a regular basis is this departmental. So this is when like a department, like a recruitment or a match analysis department, separately build a data strategy, such as visualizations in Tableau or Excel sheets. And this is very siloed in an organization, which is inefficient on cost, inefficient on time, and doesn't support the wider business, whether that's leadership or even the owners at the top level. And then the fourth stage on this adoption curve is a centralized data strategy approach. It isn't easy. It requires a good team internally or consultancy department to be created. You have to have a centralized approach in an organization, everyone in a single central database, as that image I showed at the start. And you've got to be selective on the data sources you use and how they ingest into a central database. For then the 4 key roles we talked about to work on their expertise and strengths to really pull together to provide that centralized data strategy. So take this image away with you now. Again, take a photo if you want to take a photo on your phone right now. And ask yourself where you are on this curve in data strategies and how you apply that as a whole organization or club or federation. So I'm going to hand over to Tom, who's going to talk more about the what and show you some real life examples of how some people are using data to do 2 things: support evidence-based decision making and also workflow efficiencies. So Tom, I'll hand over to you.
Perfect. So following on from what Austin has just spoken about, I am now actually going to show some real life examples of how we can use the data at the clubs that you work at now, to 1, make your life easier and quicker, and 2, provide insight to the coaches and the players. To do that, we're actually going to go into Tableau. So some of you may have used Tableau before. This is what it looks like. And what we can do here is actually take the data, take all of the information, and then visualize it so it's really easy for us to understand. Now, this first chart that we're looking at is opposition reporting. So when we know the team that we are going to play at the weekend, our next opponent, we can simply select the competition and the team who we're going to play. This is the English Premier League, but of course it can be the Russian Premier League, any league that you are interested in. You can simply click on a team and you will now see all of the players in that team. But you'll also get some really useful information alongside this as well. Really simple information, but information that is always important for coaches to know. For example, the height of the player. When we are looking at things like set pieces, it's important that we know the height of our opposition. We also know their shirt number. Again, this is really simple information, but when you're watching the video and you can only see the number on a player's back, really quickly we know which player that we're looking at in the video. We've also then got here along the bottom the minutes the player has played, how many total appearances they've made, do they start or are they substituted off or on. Now again, really quick, easy information, but this will save you a lot of time when you're looking at 30 to 40 games every season. We can really quickly get basic information about our next opponents. What we can also do here as well, where we have a date, is if this team had changed manager over a certain time period, we can actually just look at the information across certain dates as well. So we can filter that data down just to the point that we want to see. The next step, when we understand what players our opponents have got and how they use them, we then want to look at the formation that they play as well. So again, we can select our competition and we can select our next opponent. So let's go to another team here. This is telling us what formation our next opponent have played. So here we are looking at Manchester City in England. They have played a 4-3-3 on the most occasions, 24 times. And when they have played the 4-3-3 formation, you can see here, hopefully, in that circle, they have won 75% of their games. So when they play that formation, they're really successful. Now, on the opposite of that, we can actually look what formations have they played against. So what have the teams that have played Manchester City, what formation have they played? Again, here we can see that most teams, when they play against Manchester City, play a 5-3-2. However, when they do that, Manchester City still win 86% of the matches. However, if we then go to the 4-1-4-1 here, and even the 4-2-3-1, so this is when Manchester City's opponents are playing a back four rather than a back three. Manchester City only win 50% and 40% of those games. So as an analyst or as a coach, I could look at this information and actually think, well, it looks to me like playing a back four is better than playing a back three against Manchester City. They don't win quite so many games against a back four. So again, really quick information that we can get on our next opponent. Again, I'll show you how quick we can switch teams. We can look at a team just at home or just away. So we can really quickly filter down to the information that is important to us. So in this example here, which is Southampton in the English Premier League, when they play away from home, they have only played a 4-4-2. So we know every game they're going to play a 4-4-2, for example. Again, with the previous dashboard, looking at the squad lists and the players, really simple information. But by getting your data strategy right, which Austin mentioned earlier, you can get to these insights really, really quickly, which then gives you more time to actually spend watching the video, speaking to the coaches, speaking to the players. On the opposite or the next step, from saving time is then actually finding insights. So what actually do our next opponents do? How can we beat them? One way we can do this is by benchmarking. So here we can look at different metrics, different stats, and these can be anything that is important to you and your team. In this example, we are looking at passes per 90 minutes, successful passes into the final third, so passing forward, and then the percentage of passes into the final third, What this metric does is actually show us which teams are direct, that like to play long balls and long passes. What we can do here is actually search for our next opponent, and you can see it highlights them, so we can see where they rank compared to the rest of the teams in the league. So let's say, for example, we are looking at Newcastle United. We can actually see that in terms of total number of passes per game, they actually rank really quite low. However, over here, we can see their percentage of passes into the final third. So how direct are they with those long passes? They actually rank quite high. So again, as an analyst or as a coach, I know that there's a chance for my team to have a lot of the ball when we play against Newcastle. However, when Newcastle have the ball, we need to be ready for direct play and to face long balls. Again, we have the option here to just look at what the teams do at home versus what they do away. We can also filter by date again, and all of the numbers will change depending on what filters we're looking at along the top of this visualization. And the final thing that I'm going to share with you today, we've looked at match day performance, but data now is really important in player recruitment. So how can we use the data and the stats, the numbers, to actually find a new player for our team? Well, one way of doing that is by creating an index. And what an index is, it's give you one number for a player. So every single player will be represented by a single number. If I hover over some players here, you can see this is Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo, so players that we know. And they have one single score. And we can actually calculate this score based on stats and metrics that are important to us and our team. So this number here for Cristiano Ronaldo would be completely different for me than what it would be for your team and your next opponent's team. This will be bespoke to every single team. To give you a very quick idea of how we can create this number, looks something like this. What we are doing is taking metrics that are important for a striker, for a number 9. And they are shots on target, touches in the penalty area, touches in the box, expected goals, and successful through passes, so linking up with other players in the team as well. We take all of those numbers and then rank them against every other player in the data. And once we add those together, that gives us the one number, which is the player index. And it's the player index here for attacking metrics and defensive metrics, which gives us this chart. Now, if we want to sign a striker, of course, the competitions that we are looking at will be bespoke to the leagues that we believe we can sign players from. So rather than looking at England, Spain, Italy, we could potentially look at Denmark, Norway, any leagues really, anywhere around the world. We can then look at things like players' age. When were the players born? And you can see here, if I actually change this to 1993, you'll see the number of players has got smaller. This filter lets me look at the total number of minutes a player has played. If I type in 1000, again, the number of players get smaller. Now, for my team, if I want a tall striker, I want my player to be strong and good in the air, I can actually set this to 180 centimeters, which means they're going to be a tall striker. And again, the number of players in this chart gets smaller and smaller. We can then even say, I want my striker to average 0.3 expected goals per game. And you can see now, rather than looking at 600 players that we started with in this visualization, we are now down to just 70. So you can see how we're using the data to bring the pool of players smaller and smaller. So for example, I could continue to play around with some of these filters until we get a really small list of players, and it might be at this stage here, if we look at who these players are, Haaland there, playing in Germany. This might be the group of players that we're interested in. We can then go to the video and start to look at these players in more detail, and potentially obviously go and watch these players live on a match day as well. Hopefully that all made sense, but those are examples of how we can use the data that we have. If we get that data strategy right to start with, we can then start to use the data to make our lives easier, make better informed decisions, and act quicker as well. And finally, just to summarize, myself and Austin, when you're building out a data strategy, it's important first that you have that strategy in place. So everything that Austin spoke about, it's important you understand that strategy and the steps in the process. The second thing you need to do is build the right team. So make sure you've got the right people doing the right roles within the team. And of course, they need to understand both data and football as well. The third thing is create a flexible data environment. And that means that your data team or your whole club needs to be flexible to adapt to different data sources, different things that can happen with regards to the data. You need to be able to deal with and be adaptable. And finally, number 4, which is very important, is answer your current performance questions first. So that means don't go away and try and create a really complex model straight away. Start with the basics. What do you need to do on a game-by-game basis? Start with those questions first, and then build your data strategy on top of that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that and you managed to understand myself and Austin speaking English. If you'd like to contact us, of course, myself and Austin at Huddle, we'd be more than happy to talk to you and your club and how we can help you out going forward.